Let's jump right into our Immersion Day project panel. There are two portions to this panel, our nonprofit projects and our city collaboration. I'm going to introduce all of them right now and then welcome them to the stage. So in the first portion of the discussion, we'll see Justin Hendrix, Executive Director of NYC Media Lab, moderate a chat with Heather Flanagan, Digital Learning Specialist with the Billion Oyster Project, and Rebecca Elino, a PhD candidate in computational biology at Princeton University. They will then be joined by Stephen Libby, Senior Project Manager with Love City Strong, U.S. Virgin Islands, and Amanda Erland, a graduate research student at NYU Langone Medical Center, as well as Jonathan Auerbach, a PhD candidate in statistics from Columbia University. Following those presentations, we'll reset the stage for Dario Manuli of the Bloomberg Associates team in the City of Milan, Luca Venturi of the Courant Institute of Mathematical Sciences at NYU. And they'll also be joined by data scientist Xavier Gonzalez, an Immersion Day Project alum. I'd like to invite the first two groups on stage, please. Come on up. To introduce the Billion Oyster Project, we are going to show you a video.
Billion Oyster Project is an ecosystem restoration project that's designed to restore 1 billion live oysters to New York Harbor through public education initiatives. New York Harbor was really known as this oyster-centric city. It was a food that was eaten by rich people, poor people, everyone. And they were a key feature of the harbor. We have really depended on pro bono support and involving the community in really all aspects of our work, and then specifically in my work, I've needed pro bono support to do back-end software development. And so when I saw that there was this opportunity that Bloomberg gave us to have a data scientist come and help me think through things and help do some of the coding, it was a really exciting opportunity.
I'm a PhD student in computer science and computational biology at Princeton University. So I've been talking a lot with Heather about the digital platform. Kids go out, to these oyster research stations and they take down the data, and then they'll enter the data onto the digital platform. So, we have measurements of how the oysters are growing over time and measurements of water quality and temperature and all these different factors from these research stations. Then you can try to figure out, is this a location that oysters are able to thrive in? Are they able to grow here?
It's just so beneficial to have Rebecca's eye when it comes to, okay, what kind of data do we visualize? How do we visualize it? Even just down to the discrete level of, do we do a line graph or like a bar graph? One of the big challenges for us is to figure out what kind of structures we need to use to restore oysters, which places are the best spots, where we can put oysters so that the larvae will be distributed throughout the harbor. Oysters will ultimately help restore the health of the harbor, but we're still in this kind of in-between period where we get times where there's no oxygen in the water, or there's not enough food for the oysters, or there's like a whole host of other figures that can affect their health.
One thing that was missing from the digital platform in its current form was, how to visualize the data. So I was trying to make that be sort of easier for kids and anyone else that is really going onto this platform, so that you can go on, you can access the data, you can select sort of variables that you want to visualize, and then you can look for like interesting correlations. For example, like how are the oysters growing over time? Are they increasing in size over time? Are they decreasing? That could indicate whether this is a good location for oysters to grow, and being able to visualize that directly on the platform is going to get kids interested and able to explore the data more. And also we want to get kids to use this as a method to sort of learn something about math, about data analysis. So we're also incorporating, how do you learn about statistics from this analysis?
It really gives kids this tactile, hands-on experience with what's under the harbor. They pull an oyster cage up and it's full of crabs and shrimp and fish. There's like a wealth of living organisms in New York Harbor that you would just never know walking around the city, and giving kids this experience to handle living creatures and to take care of them and to feel like they are doing the work to safeguard the health of these creatures in the harbor is so important to them. And as someone coming from a teaching background, it's so valuable to do what we call inquiry-based pedagogy. So the idea is that by kids asking and answering their own questions, they learn better and their learning is that much more meaningful.
Okay, next up our presentation from Lovestrong. You guys want to take the helm?
Yeah, I'll go.
All three of us?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Like up?
Yeah, I think it's just the.
All right, I'm Amanda Ernlin. This is Jonathan.
Hi. Hi, I'm Steven.
Okay. So the goal for our project was to work towards diversifying the economy of St. John's, which is one of the islands in the Virgin Islands. So the Virgin Islands depend heavily on tourism, and tourism has declined over the past decade. Specifically after the storms Maria and Irma, tourism fell 25%. And Love City Strong's goal is to diversify St. John's economy. So St. John has 4,000 residents. It's the smallest of the three islands. The other two islands, St. Croix and St. Thomas, are much bigger, 50,000 as of the 2010 census. So Love City Strong conducted a survey. They used a two-stage design. So they divided St. John into 33 quadrants and classified each quadrant based off of the number of residents as low, medium, or large population, and sampled roughly 500 individuals across each of these quadrants, oversampling low and medium relative to the 2010 census. So the question for our project was, do the respondents represent the St. John population at large?
I'll just go back for a second. Just to explain this graph, this is the island of St. John. It's it's in this plot of the Virgin Islands. It's the green. It's the upper right. And one of the challenges, which we'll I guess get to at the end, is that St. John is lumped in with St. Thomas on a lot of the publicly available data sets. And so anyway, this is the upper right. This is St. John. These are the estates, not quite the quadrants that they used to sample, but close enough for our purposes. The colors represent how many people lived there as of 2010, according to the 2010 decennial census. And the black dots represent the individual places that were surveyed. And so we see general clustering where the people are. So our job is we're going to help visualize, but we see our main job is helping to make this sample representative of the population at large. And so in general, the population can be represented by the sample that Love City Strong took if we can get at the probability that an individual would have been selected for the survey. So in general, you'll remember from your survey statistics class that if a respondent has a 10% chance of being included in the survey, then they represent 1 in 10 or about 10 people. And this graph is an example. For the most part, they did to their credit, did an amazing job sampling, which makes our job much easier. In this case, relative to 2010 population, we see a few discrepancies. And this is an example of a discrepancy we noticed. Here, the graph looks a little complicated. It's actually very simple. Within each quadrant that they sampled, you would hope that the population was kind of or the samples randomly selected from the population. So all we're computing here for each age group, say the bottom are 17-year-olds and under, we're looking at the proportion of the sample that is 17 or younger, and then subtracting the proportion indicated by the 2010 census. And then the lines are just showing variation across the quadrants. And what we'd like is for those lines to kind of be over the 0 there. That would indicate no discrepancy on average. And all I really want you guys to take away from this plot is that on average, relative to the 2010 census, they seem to be undersampling younger people and oversampling older people. That's the direction of the discrepancy. This is not necessarily a problem. It doesn't necessarily indicate that they took a bad sample. It could indicate that a lot has changed since 2010. But
like a couple of major hurricanes.
like a couple of major hurricanes, decline in tourism, just normal things happening over an 8-year period. And so what we can do, and right now we can compute approximate sampling weights and rake to the 2010 population, and then hopefully when the 2020 census comes out, that hopefully it happens and they count St. John, hopefully we'll be able to then rake to that population. And so the two major challenges that we had was and what I learned, I didn't know going in, is that the St. John is not treated with parity to the other states in the US in terms of data quality. That much of the public data sets I'm used to working with don't exist for St. John. And so they're not included in the American Community Survey. They're not included in the Highway Performance Management System, the Fatality Accident Reporting System. Basic statistics that I rely on in other areas, they just don't exist. The University of the Virgin Islands does do a community survey, but it's on, I believe, the 2010 census. So even if we use that survey in later years, it's still drawing its weights from a much earlier survey. And then even if we do go to the 2010 census and the 2020 going forward, because St. John's is relatively small, it's about 4,000 people, it's been to St. Thomas in a vast majority of the data sets we would use. And even when we can get individual data, the margin of errors are pretty large.
So I'll ask you all to join us back on the couch. Okay. As she mentioned, I'm Justin Hendrix, Executive Director of NYC Media Lab. And we've been so pleased to partner with Bloomberg on this event for the last several years. I think this is the 4th year I've been to this event in September, so very grateful to see all of you here. It's grown so much. This particular activity, these immersion projects, they have evolved, and it's been great to see how these data scientists that we take from academia and sort of parachute them into a situation or a set of problems or opportunities with nonprofit or government organizations, how they're able to take their techniques and quickly apply them. That's really what I want to put my questions to you all about, really is about how that relationship was formed very quickly, how you got to a set of problems or opportunities that you could use your tools to address, and what will happen now as a result of these projects having taken place. So I have to start with the Oysters. Is this the first time you've worn a life jacket and done data science? Or is that?
Actually, no.
Oh wow. Okay.
So this is kind of a coincidence because I didn't have a say in like what project I was assigned to.
But she's really excited that
yeah, but it was I was because I'd actually like been interested in marine biology. I almost went into marine biology, and I actually did another collaboration during my PhD with some ecologists working with barnacles. So it was kind of like awesome that I could go look at these marine organisms in like 2 different ways.
Okay, wow. So that you've got a bit of a track record with undersea creatures. Tell me though, when you came and first sat down with the project, what were you looking for? What were you trying to assess when you went in?
Yeah. So I really wanted to know like where was the need strongest. So like Heather has been developing this digital platform for the Billion Oyster Project, where like kids can enter in all of the data that they collect from these oyster research stations, and I just wanted to see like where would data analysis be helpful, like what kind of visualizations are helpful, and it's also kind of a little bit trickier than if you were writing a academic paper, because you're talking to kids that have very limited like knowledge of math and statistics, and you want to like communicate something that they can understand, and that they'll also like learn from.
So there's a little sort of a user-centered design kind of problem in that.
So like I originally gave her a lot of plots, and she's like, these are really good, but like they're probably not going to work with the kids. So then I had to like go back to the drawing board and like reiterated it.
And that was that must have been a rapid transition between the two of you.
Yeah. So
Because this project, how long did this last? How long did you work on this?
So since like we're kind of local, we're both New York based. I like went back and forth like about 5 times, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of came into this with a little bit of a laundry list because we've been really lucky to have pro bono support from lots of different people. That's kind of like the model of Billion Oyster Project. The idea is not just, yeah, we could throw a billion oysters in the water and that's cool, but we really need like all New Yorkers to participate. Like we really want that community engagement, and specifically we want engagement from students because like they're the ones who need the STEM skills, and they're going to be the ones who are stewarding the harbor like long after we're gone. So when we were talking about visualizations, I came from a background, I used to be an English teacher, I wasn't a math teacher. So, kind of thinking through like, okay, like how, what age group is going to learn a box plot? What age group is going to learn like a bar chart? And really trying to figure out, like she was, she had these like amazing visualizations at first, and I was like, okay, but for all the first graders out there, we probably should start really simple with just a bar graph. And then kind of, getting kids like there's like the concept in education of scaffolding, where the idea is that you're pushing kids to just a little bit and a little bit further than where they are before. So she was really great at helping me think through like, okay, here's the first basic kind of graph that a kid could see. And then when you're comparing 2 data sets, like here's how we can move to that point, and really work them all the way through to something where it's like on the same page of this application I'm building, you have something that works for a first grader and you have something that works for an AP statistics student.
Mm-hmm. So was there a similar negotiation on this side in terms of your project, the tools that you could bring to bear and what the problem needed?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I don't have a background in statistics or data analytics, so this is fantastic for us. Like all nonprofits, we rely on outside funding and outside resources to help us propel forward and to actually like make our projects worthwhile. And so, they're helping me analyze the data that we're going to use to get funding, hopefully from HUD or the EPA for workforce development. And we got to collaborate and develop a relationship that will last just further beyond this project and help us get funding. So
I'll say something, I guess, real quick. I think Stephen's being a little humble. When they came to us, they said we did this survey and we executed this fairly complicated survey design. So I think most consulting projects I've ever done is they do this convenience sample and they say, oh, is N large enough? And then you say, well, what are you trying to estimate? And then the estimate's not really well defined. And then once you get down to it, then you say, well, actually, you asked the completely wrong, like there's nothing you can really do. You asked different questions. Or in this case, they executed, I guess the CDC had done, I don't know how you guys got into it, but they did the stratified sample and and yes, there were some small deviations, but for the most part, if you look at the data, the margins line up with what you would expect.
Yeah.
So it makes our work a lot easier. Maybe there was some education along the way about what we thought was important to do, but like 90% of the work had been done just by like doing, like you guys did your homework. And
the inspiration for this specific survey, and again, this is looking for workforce development funding, came from the CDC. They did a Casper-style survey, which was developed in conjunction with the World Health Organization. And I noticed that, again, because St. John is lumped into the same territory as St. Thomas, that we were only being sampled, I think they sampled 35 homes for the entire population of St. John. And I was like, that's not really going to give you accurate data if you're looking at bringing in funding for our island specifically. So we went ahead and recreated that, but then did about 575 samples. So we were able to get pretty accurate data for the population.
And let me just ask you, both sides of this, or both these collaborations, just a quick question for both of you. Are you going to carry on working together, do you suspect? And either way, for the nonprofit leaders, what will you do differently going forward? So maybe that to the Oysters first.
I'd love to run for it for more. But I think it's really important when you're engaging pro bono help to have a really clearly defined set of things that you might want somebody to work on, and to have kind of an understanding of like what people's specialties are, and okay, so you need a back-end software developer to do this thing, but you need somebody who's really like good at statistics to do this thing. So I think like Pro bono stuff works the best when you have, as the nonprofit, you come in with something like pretty clear that you want to do. You've done your
define
homework,
start
like,
and end.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, and then figure out like the right people to make it happen.
And what will you do differently now as a result of the work you've done?
Well, one of the things that was really exciting is she introduced me to a new like graphing visualization tool. So because we're a nonprofit, the role that I'm in is both like teaching technology, but also because I'm in charge of this web application and I want to go faster and I want to get things done beyond what we have funding for, it's just been a process of like, let me teach myself to do this. So it's been really great that she's like shown me new tools and things because it's like, okay, all right, she's giving me an intro. I don't really understand it all yet, but like I can dig through and hopefully get to the point where I can, you know, really like, and then maybe ask her questions if she has time for me.
Cool. How about this side? What will we do differently? And any area for further collaboration?
I mean, yeah, Jonathan and I were actually chatting about the newest project we're getting ready to launch. We're trying to help revamp our EMS system. We have huge issues that we need to troubleshoot with that. And so we were chatting about potentially developing an app and who does he know and who do I know that could collaborate on that and help us with that very important part of our recovery. So.
Otherwise, we were discussing data visualization and how to further visualize the data that we have from the survey study. So that's an area of active development, especially some sort of a website so that we can, in real time, look at data.
And maybe a movie, too.
Maybe a movie, yeah.
More trips to the Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
And let me just ask for the academics on the stage, just one quick question. How has this changed your approach to your practice?
Yeah, I mean, you don't think a lot when you're in an academic setting and like writing for other academics in your very narrow field of like how do you explain your science to a more broad audience, especially like to kids and stuff. And it sort of helps in this like science communication, like how do I communicate what I'm doing, which is related to this. It's also statistical, like mathematical analyses of large-scale data. How do I communicate this to people in a way that they understand it? So that's definitely something that this has helped with.
Excellent.
I would just say don't take public data sets for granted. I think that there are a lot of resources out there, and you don't know they're gone until you don't have them.
Yeah.
Amanda, anything from you?
I guess I've really learned how to utilize survey data. I come from a genetics background. We don't typically look at survey data, so this has been a real learning experience.
Excellent. Well, I don't know about you, but every time I hear these projects present, it makes me optimistic about the world and that we can solve the problems that we face. And so I want to thank you for that, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
At this point, I think we'll usher off one group, and our next group, so we've got Dario, Luca, Xavier will tell us about their project with the City of Milan. Is one of you presenting to start? You want to?
You want? Okay. Hi, everyone. So first of all, let me thank Bloomberg Associates for the generous support to the City of Milan. And I want to thank also Rose Gilhern and her beautiful team for the hard work that we've been doing so far. My name is Dario, and I'm the CRM and Customer Intelligence Director for the City of Milan. Let me use 1 minute to explain what that means. My 93-year-old grandma, in the last 10 years, tried hard to understand what this means, what I was doing, my job. And so she was born in Milan, actually, and she's in love with her city. So lately this year, I finally come up with an answer, and I said, Grandma, I'm a therapist. I help people to make better relationship. And guess what? She got it. She was happy, and I'm happy as well, because not only I can tell anyone what I do, but also it's true. It's exactly what CRM is all about. And relationship implies a dialogue. So the City of Milan ultimately has the ambition to build a genuine dialogue with its citizens. But what is a dialogue about? Which are the pillars that a good dialogue relies on? In my opinion, there are 3 features that make the partner for a dialogue irresistible. And these are, no? Well, it doesn't, well, I'll tell you, it's there. I know it, I wrote it. Humility.
They're testing your humility.
Yeah, actually. Humility, curiosity, and empathy. So every city, or brand, or even a person that is genuinely curious about its users' needs, that is humble enough to look from their point of view, and that results empathetic when it deals with its customers, a city like that wins the trust and benevolence of its audience. It's a long way to go, I think. But none of this is even possible if the listening tools or centers do not work properly. So the listening centers for a city are the touch points that we offer to our citizens. So in the City of Milan, we have 020202, that is a telephone number that you can access for any kind of inquiries, not emergency calls. An online form that is accessible through the website, a number of, social networks, and a number of official emails, both to write to the mayor or to the deputy mayors or to the different city agencies. And of course, we have front offices, right? At the core of this ecosystem, we have a website, and in the website, you can create your own profile and access directly to the large part of services directly. Okay. In terms of volume, we have the website reached some 6.5 million unique users per year. These are numbers referred to 2017. And most of the visitors use the online services page with some 600,000 registered users. The 020202 process more than 1 million calls per year, while the online form counts for less than 100,000 tickets, at least last year. So what we already know from these touch points are the expectation of our citizen. So they want, for sure, us to give them clear information about services and procedures. They want the city to be responsive and to respond timely to their requests. And most important, they want consistency and certainty of the answer that we give them, no matter how complicated or how many offices or city agencies are implied in this answer. Okay. What we're doing to achieve this is, first of all, we're working, these are like goals, to position the website as the primary source of information, as a primary touch point. We are working to harmonize, to make the user need consistent between different city agencies and different services. And we're working to increase the performance of our customer service. And in terms of actions, in the beginning of this year, we started to completely re-engineer the workflows of the most commonly, or the most used services. We built a centralized CRM dashboard that is exactly what we're going to see in 30 seconds. We will upgrade our CRM software to a new version that will allow us, beginning next year, to have a centralized platform for telephone, online form, social networks, emails, everything. So everything in one place. So no matter if you write, then you go to a front office, then you write on social network, you'll be always the same person, always the same case. Okay, that's what we're doing. So let's move on to the dashboard demo. PowerPoint. Should I use this for?
No, it's there.
Not to point. Okay. So the dashboard is the dashboard present different sections. The first one that you see here has the overall number of processed requests. So there are 600, little more than 600,000 requests, and we always have the variation from the previous year, so 2017, and from every prior period that you select. So if you select April, we will see what is the variation between April and March. Okay. Behind this, there is a tree map that represents the distribution of all the tickets and cases in the citizens' needs. So, for example, the big green box represents the request for new ID cards or to renew your ID card. On the right side of the screen, you have a monthly trend and a weekly trend, and that is very important because it allows us to understand the seasonality of a service or procedure. Okay. The second visualization in this section refers to the growth. So for each week of the year, it gives you an idea of what's happening. So if this is very helpful because it helps us to understand emerging issue and to alert the proper city agencies and departments. Maybe we know already that that's meant to happen, so that we know why this is happening, but sometimes we don't. So it's something that we use to drill down to a problem and understand what's happening. So the next section has some performance metrics about the 020202 contact center. So we have the number of total call that we received, that it's more than 1 million. The average waiting time for people, the conversation time for people, and the split between answered call and abandoned call, and the response rate. On the right side, you have a trend, again, a monthly trend with all these indicators month by month. So for example, you can see that from June to August, the response rate, that is the red dot, yes, jumped from 50% to 90%, and that's because we were in the process of changing vendor for the contact center, and so that's the result of this process. Next section has similar metrics, but for the teams that work on the online form. So again, we have the overall number of requests that we got, 50,000. The split between resolved case and in progress, and the resolution rate, 80%. And 9.2 is the average resolution time for a ticket. So from when someone writes to the point where that case is closed and everything is done, there are 9 days there. Under that, you have the distribution between the different teams that work to solve this process, and consider that this is a little higher. I mean, these 9 days refers to, let me say, second level problem. So it's not just getting an information, getting an answer to your email, it's to solve your case. So maybe to see your tax situation and to change something, etc. On the right side again, we have monthly trend, a weekly trend, and a trend for the resolution time. So how the resolution time is going over the year. The last part of this beautiful dashboard that we worked on, it's a forecast model for the incoming calls. And that's very important because as we have around 150 operators that answer to the call on many different issues, we need to tell the vendor and to know in advance how many calls we're going to receive. That's very important because we don't want to have 150 people in a week or in a day where 80 are enough, and we don't want for sure to have the opposite, so that everyone will wait forever to talk to someone. But I leave that to Luca Venturi that worked on this model.
Thank you, Dario. Hi, everybody. I'm Luca Venturi. I'm currently pursuing a PhD at NYU currently in applied mathematics, mainly focusing on deep learning and signal processing. And I'm very happy to have been selected by the Data for Good Exchange program as part of the data science team to work on the Milan dashboard project. So as Dario was saying, one of the features they were interested in having available was a forecasting feature. They receive contacts to two main channels, the contact me and the 020202 line. And for the band of the referred to, it's important to have an estimate of the number of daily incoming calls for the next period of time, so that they can both avoid waste of resources and provide a better service in terms of quality. So here we have the forecasting that we made. We use a machine learning model. The municipality of Milan provided us with the data from July 2017 up to August 2018, and asked us to have the prediction, the forecasting of daily incoming calls for the next 3 months, so September, October, and November. This is what you see in the red curve. We also plotted the test data, so the month of August, which is the blue curve, and this is how we are measuring our accuracy of the model. We also have some aggregation of these values. In these tables, these are simply weekly and monthly aggregations. Okay, and one of the main challenges was to come up. There are a lot of models in the literature for time series modeling. So the main challenge was to understand what was the right model. We tried several different models, and they were all performing well, but on a short period. For 3 months, many of them, they were showing forecasting that were kind of degenerating. Also, we wanted our model to be fast and easy to fit, and we also wanted to be able to add other important features that we wanted easily. So we decided to opt for a decomposable time series model with 3 main components, which are a trend component, the seasonality component, and the holiday component. So the trend component is simply fitted by a piecewise constant growth rate function. We have 2 seasonality components. One is a weekly seasonality component. As you can see, there is clearly a periodical weekly partner in the data. So the number of calls is very high on Monday, and it drops during the weekend. And there is also a yearly level of seasonality. This is important because in different months behave differently. For example, August is a month where many people are on vacation in Italy, and this can be seen by the values in the plot, for example. Finally, the last feature that is included are holidays, or more generally, special days. For example, the 1st of November and the 15th of August are vacation days in Italy, and so we wanted the model to take into account of this, and so we can see that the prediction are indeed almost 0. And yes, finally, this is just for display purposes, but the actual process is going to be automatized, and the model is going to be refreshed on a weekly basis with new data, and the prediction for the next 3 economic months is going to be sent periodically to the external service.
Thank you. You're done?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Luca. And maybe it's worth mentioning that a next step on this model is to include a filter and an attribute on the needs so the reason why people is calling. So to have a forecast that not only tell you how much calls are you going to get, but also what is the content of the call that you should expect. Again, we have people that will be able to answer, to different issues, to different. So it's important to manage the stuffing, knowing all of this data and information. Okay, moving on, wrapping up. If that helps me. Okay, so why these fantastic dashboards are helpful? First of all, we are able to inform the mayor and the deputy mayors about emerging issues that need their attention, that needs to be addressed. Secondly, we provide city managers real-time updates, and we keep them close to the citizen needs. That's very important because needs change all the time. So if you, for example, if you change one service from a physical attachment, from a desk to online, something will happen. People will have new kind of problems and everything. So you need to keep all the city managers aware in real time of how is the feeling of these citizens. We are able to increase the responsiveness and to respond in a timely way to our citizens, and to measure the impact of any corrective action that we implement on procedures and services. And as Luca was saying, to plan in advance, we are able to plan in advance and more accurately the customer service staffing. Last but not least, a sneak peek on what's next. So first of all, we want to integrate and measure other touch points that are not covered yet, like emails, like front office and stuff like that, so that we have everything in the same space. We want to switch from a more descriptive approach that we're using today to a predictive and prescriptive, or even prescriptive analytics approach, so that we'll be able to attach some action to the information that we are going to do. That's something similar to what we did with the forecasting model. And we're interested in applying a natural language processing layer in order that every chat, every message, every email, and other text that we can analyze will give us more information about, for example, what is the sentiment, or to discover new topics that we were not aware of in specific services. And so hopefully we will create this fantastic dialogue with our citizens. Thank you. And thank you.
We'll have a quick conversation. And I think, I mean, Luca, I'll ask you the question. I kind of put the academics on the last panel, but how will this change the way you approach your practice going forward, having had this experience?
Just to me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I come from a very academical background, so that is very different because, like, you don't have to care about the actual. I mean, if the model is not gonna do well, then it's not important. Like, I mean, it's important, but it's not affecting anyone directly. And so here I had to take care about different things, different aspects like this, and also like actual work with the actual data coming from actual application. So not something like just made up to do some models.
Right. So there's numbers and people's problems behind all
exactly.
that data.
So this was like a great experience for me. I learned a lot from it, like from this having to deal with a much different background.
Great.
And yeah.
Now, Dario, I'll put this question to you. Maybe it's too big picture, but how? I mean, this obviously these techniques for introducing data science into municipal government, you know, we've been at it now for a while. They seem to be getting more and more sophisticated and you know, producing more and more results. How do you think it is changing the relationship between the government and the citizen?
Well, at the end, I think that what a citizen will love to is to be really recognized and to be seen. So whenever you you make a call or you go in a place, you would like not to be just a number or to be, you know, one problem to be taken, to be addressed, but to understand, hey, this guy maybe called 10 times, he tried to email us, so he did all these things, and we understand this, and so we can, for example, escalate this problem. We can take, we can give a priority to this case over others because it's so. I think that is something that I would like to do, to have citizens that feels, hey, my city really knows me well and understand what I need and where I struggle to do something. So that's something that I think
they feel empowered to participate.
Yeah, I think at the end, I mean, in Italy especially, I don't know here, but in Italy, there's for sure a trust issue, with the public sector. So I think that can help a lot to make that the administration, the city is really taking care of you, knows you, and doesn't lose important pieces of information, and give value to the time that you spend to do something, to inform them that something is not working well. So I think that's the most important thing.
And I'll just ask you one last question. What do you think you will do next with all of the data that you're getting? Will you open it up to other areas of inquiry or to academics to come in perhaps and be able to take advantage of looking at the information that you're collecting?
Well, let me tell you that this is still a prototype, so we still need to work on it, to look at it carefully, to test it. So it won't be open to inquiry yet, to any other interaction yet. But working on it, for example, we tested some models for, again, natural language processing and topic discovery, and we were working on Italian semantics, that it's less used than, tested than, for example, English. So there are many areas where, or for example, again, the categorization of needs, of user needs, even if the name of the things change from a country to another, but at the end, or from a city to another, but at the end, what you need to help citizens is very close. So, working on this taxonomy and sharing this taxonomy, these models, etc. I think that once you get a good result, it's definitely worth it to be shared. And
are there other cities around you that have cottoned on to what you're doing and are interested?
Well, it's still quite
new.
Yeah, new and confidential. It's not confidential, but it's not published yet. But I'm sure they will. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And what from your perspective, having seen this before, having done another immersion project before, maybe I could ask you to address, since we've only got 1 minute and 29 seconds left. What do you think now, having been through another cycle of these immersion projects? What have you learned? What do you think from a pattern recognition perspective?
Yeah. Let me tell you that this is the third time that I'm here. Everyone that I meet here, they say, "Oh, you again? Come on." I'm going to be next year as well, so let's be prepared. So that is a good question because actually the problems are mainly the same, 2 years ago, we worked in Philadelphia with Benefits Data Trust, which is an amazing nonprofit organization. And one of the things that we did there was a forecast of incoming calls, which is exactly the same as we did here. So last year, we went to Bogota in Colombia, South America, and we built a citizen inputs dashboard. You may have heard from Rose this morning, which was really successful. We launched it with the mayor a few months ago in a big conference press. So most of the problems are common. I wouldn't say the same, because every culture is different. Every organization has their own particular things. But I'm sure that this event is an excellent opportunity we can gather together academia, government, nonprofit organization, private sector, and we can join our efforts in find a common solution to this problem, because it's very similar for many organizations or administrations. So.
And now it is flashing 0. That was a perfect ending. I do think that's an excellent point. That's what this event is about, I think, is about that type of pattern recognition, bringing people together to see common problems, see common solutions, and the fact that we've just sat here talking about really 3 projects that have in their way contributed to strengthening the interaction between governments and places where people live, and certainly the citizen. And that problem of trust and democracy is, I think, something that we're all contending with. So once again, you've left me optimistic. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think we're done.